We're gonna use one and switch.
We're gonna go. So listen, have to stand on the question. On this point, okay. Could I get your attention, please? Is it on? Yeah. Good evening. I am Dutch and I'm born with a very loud voice. Dutch people are born with very, very loud voices, as you may know. We can get every room quiet very quickly. Good. Welcome to Europe House / Ireland House, to Brussels to the Bay. A bit of an unusual starting time. We are morning kind of people. We do like breakfast, but now we do like evening food, etc. But this has to do, of course, with TrustCon that has been going on for 3 days. And I think, I mean, particularly those who just come from TrustCon after 3 days of discussion on trust and safety and social media and platforms, etc. I mean, it's kind of really, I'm impressed that you are keen to continue those conversations. This speaks passion, but so all of you very welcome. And we also thought, because it's TrustCon, that we and this is the 3rd time that like we are organizing a Brussels to the Bay, like in the margin of TrustCon, that we wanted to put like a particular topic forward for discussion, which we believe is very important. It's complicated, but it's very important, which is the future of social media. Because when social media emerged, so some 20 years ago, I mean, it was an optimistic promise. It would like empower people. It would democratize information. It would connect people. I mean, connect individuals across continents, across kind of countries, borders, across cultures. And I mean, some of that has happened. I mean, but I mean, of course, you've seen. I mean, there's been new opportunities. I mean, as families, I mean, my kids are living in Europe. We are connected. I can see what they're doing. Sometimes not. I wish I could see what they're doing, but I can't. You see entrepreneurs and content creators. I mean, have seized new opportunities. You see people have joined communities. I mean, social media has been very important also during major social events. I mean, crisis. I mean, think of COVID and also to mobilize people. So definitely social media has been partly a force for the good, but with all of these benefits, we have also seen some of the downsides. I mean, I think we're all concerned about the children's mental health. We are concerned about hate speech, about misogyny. We are concerned about rabbit holes. We are concerned about the spread of disinformation, which is like is really very, very fast and concerning. We are concerned about products that are unsafe, that reach consumers. I mean, we are concerned about election interference. We are concerned about the power of some of these platforms. I mean, they are more powerful than many countries around the world, and they're actually using that power to influence democratic processes. So that's the downside, say the dark side of social media, the dark side of the internet. And many of these social media companies collect vast amounts of personal data about us. They know more about us, about you, than maybe you know yourself, or certainly people in your environment. They target you with very sophisticated advertising, and they compete fiercely for like one thing, which is your attention. Because the longer you stay online, the more valuable you become. And so this kind of raises the question, which is going to be like discussed by this outstanding panel, like kind of not just kind of do we need social media, but what kind of social media do we want? I mean, and a social media where the interests of the users come first, a social media that like prioritizes healthy conversations over outrage, prioritizes like privacy over surveillance, transparency over manipulation. I mean, that puts human well-being at the center rather than this endless engagement. Well, these are not just technological questions, although a lot of the issues that we will be talking about tonight are about like technology, interoperability, those kind of things, governance questions, what type of infrastructure you need, what kind of business model you need. But this is an essential question to kind of what kind of social media we want to create and we want to kind of in our societies that we live in. And we have an excellent panel tonight, and moderator Julia will moderate, because that's why she is the moderator. That's what moderators do. But she also is opinionated, so she'll probably also take the opportunity to inject a few of her own thoughts. That's also Julia. I think the question is, which I think in general to the panel is like, well, we know what we've got. How do we get to like a more healthy social media? What is needed to take us from where we are now to like, I think what most people want to be the social media of the future. With that, no, you don't need a microphone, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Don't get the tool. No, don't want any tool, but you have to put it in your pocket.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Hera, for the introduction. Who doesn't love a Wednesday evening after 3 days of TrustCon event? It's very surprising to see you all here, so no, we're very happy. I promise, I think with the questions I have, 2-3 hours should be enough. Something like minimum. Yeah, okay. Well, make yourself comfortable, I guess. My name is Julia. I'm the Online Safety Policy Officer here at the European Union office in San Francisco. I work on the Digital Services Act, and for my own sake and your all sake, we're not going to be talking about the DSA today, at least not directly, right?
I'll try.
Okay, so no, well, Hera gave already a great introduction. So before heading on to the actual discussion, I'll let my great set of panelists introduce themselves.
I'm Daphne Keller. I work on platform regulation at Stanford Law School. I was a lawyer at Google from 2004 to 2014. So I have in-house experience, but it's been a long time.
Good evening. I'm Johannes Ernst. I am an engineer by training, an entrepreneur by choice, and a community organizer by necessity, because we're doing decentralized stuff here, and that requires organizing communities. I have contributed to some of these protocols that underlie a decentralized social media. Which is not on the agenda, also a co-chair of one of the groups at the W3C that does that. I have a company called Dazzle Labs, which builds relevant technology. And also I organize a conference called Fediforum, and a community where the people worldwide come together to build this kind of stuff.
Very cool. My name is Anna Seiter. I'm German. I'm a German media lawyer by training. I studied at Stanford. Afterwards, eBay hired me from Stanford. I worked 12 years for eBay as eBay's chief privacy officer. And since beginning of the year, I'm the CEO of a new social media company, which is called W.
Super. Well, Anna got the outfit memo that I didn't get, because she's fully European Union colors tonight. Just a coincidence. Anyway, so why are we here today? Let's start with that. I think Hera touched upon many of the issues that we can recall and we can talk about when it comes to today's landscape of social media. And many of the ideas that we will discuss tonight and that are behind lots of these alternative and decentralized solutions have been around for some time, but it is worth it to discuss now. Why are we here, and why is it relevant to discuss about these issues today? So if you'd like to give it a go, this is a question for the three of you. Why do you think we are here today, and why do regulators like us should think about these issues now?
You got the mic.
I got the mic. Okay, so Gerard said earlier, 20 years ago, we had high hopes for social media, and some of us, myself included, said, with these centralizations going on, this will end badly. Now, it has ended badly, and in fact, it ended, all the bad things we predicted was going to happen, did happen, and a whole lot of other things we didn't predict at the time. So for 20 years, more or less, we all have been saying, this is going to happen. This is what was going to happen. Now, for the first time in those 20 years, people understand there is a problem. because 10 years ago, they did not understand there was a problem, and you could speak all day long you wanted that this was going to be a problem. Now people understand the problem. What they don't know yet is that the problem can be solved, okay? And what they haven't done yet is taking this psychological step of saying, what about I take myself out of my comfort zone and I try whether this might actually be true. And when enough people do that, then we flip the market, I say.
So the question is, why is this important now?
Mhm.
So the way I arrived at this is looking at platform regulation proposals that basically accepted that we have a very small handful of companies with highly centralized power over people's speech, and said, okay, now the government just has to tell them how to use that power correctly. And that runs into Article 10 problems in Europe. It runs into First Amendment problems here. Also, it's super boring and, there are many, many downsides of that. And I think increasingly policymakers are realizing the downsides of, leaving power in the hands where it currently sits. And looking at decentralized solutions that instead can try to disseminate power to the margins of the system, let users make their own decisions, have more diversity, et cetera. So we saw the Council of Europe actually put out a quite strongly worded recommendation on this, centering user empowerment and talking about the specific players in ecosystems like Blue Sky or like Mastodon and the legal protections that would be needed to bring them into being. So I think it's kind of an exciting moment. I started writing about this in the summer of 2000.
COVID.
No, 2000.
2000.
2000. It was a version for browsers. But I've never seen it have this kind of policymaker attention. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I had a bit the awakening moment. Probably that was in December last year, I think 6th of December, when there was a post from Elon Musk on X where he said, I think he just got a fine, and he said, I want to eliminate the European Union. And just afterwards, you saw European politicians complaining on X about X and the fact that there's no alternative to X. So that was the situation when I talked. I felt like something is a bit schizophrenic here, and there should be an alternative. And I was like talking to my husband, like, there must be someone in Europe doing this. And then he said, you need to talk to one of my friends from Sweden, to Ingmar Rentzhog. He's thinking exactly the same. I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I talked to Ingmar, and they had the exact same feeling in Sweden. And then we teamed up, and then we thought someone needs to do it. There are several other initiatives in Europe happening right now, but we felt at one point also, we need to do something. And this is why we decided we want to found another social media company called W for several reasons. We called it W because W stands for the main questions in investigative journalism, like what, when, why, when, who. It also stands for other things, but it's just a coincidence that it comes in the alphabet before X. I put that aside. But we thought it's a good moment to start that. And then we decided first we want to build W with a lot of time. How naive we were, in 2026, and we want to launch it in 2027. But at one point we decided we don't have time to wait so long, because we saw at one point that many politicians already left X. They probably, you remember that in the media, every week there's like, this media house is leaving X, this politician is leaving X. I think the Dutch government left X already. And then we thought, we want to capture this momentum. We cannot wait until January 2027. And this is why, when we decided, we give up all our Christmas holidays, skiing holidays, weekends, Easter holidays, whatever holidays, and we want to launch the first beta version in June. Because we all know Europe, and we know Europe is at one point on summer holidays from mid-July until beginning of September, actually. And we thought if we miss this time window, it might be pretty late. And this is why we decided to launch a beta version with a wait list, so that we can, bring on board people. We learn and grow. And scale like in a controlled way. And this is why we have now the situation that we have an app, we have the social media platform already, but we bring on people in a controlled way. And I have the QR code in case you're interested. I can, invite you later today. But this is why we have this situation right now that we cannot let in everyone right now. But that was my moment when I decided, when I saw this post from Elon Musk, I want to eliminate the European Union, coming back to your points, because I feel that's very dangerous that an owner of such a powerful social media platform has a very clear political agenda. So I find that very dangerous, combined with the fact that I heard that on X are already more than 50% AI bots. We don't know exactly where these bot farms are being steered from, what kind of political agenda they have, who they want to manipulate, but we clearly know that Europe is a target of this manipulation. And at one point, Europeans felt like we need to stand up, we need to have our own public square for opinion building.
Okay, so that really set the scene for what we're going to discuss about now. We've talked about issues linked to market concentration, centralized platforms, lack of transparency, lack of accountability, fundamentally issues very closely linked to the business models that the platforms are being run on. Johannes, maybe I'll turn it over to you to understand a bit better about terminology that we often hear about when we're talking about alternative social media networks, social media models. So we hear about the Fediverse, open protocols, AT protocol, activity hub, we hear about decentralized networks. Can you tell us a bit more about that, just as an overview, so that we know we're all on the same page? And how do these models differentiate from the dominant one that we've been discussing and somehow criticizing now?
So
we have a slide.
Who is confused by the word salad?
Who's what?
Confused by the word salad of all these terms and all these things. I would assume that some people are brave enough to say that. I sometimes am too, and if I am, then bad things happen. Anyway, I have a slide here that hopefully can illustrate this a little, and this is put together in quick, and you can disagree with it in various places, but I think it helps illustrate the point, and because I'm here, let me just walk over there. So this is what, look at the left thing here first. This is what we're used to. What is social media? There is a social media platform, insert this, your favorite one, or most infamous one here, which has a gazillion of users, all of which, when they interact with each other, go through a social media platform. That's how it works. That's what the state of the art is, right? There's one platform for the entire world. There is one approach to trust and safety. There is one leader in charge, in many cases, and one leader that cannot be fired because they have various kinds of supermajority voting rights in their companies. And there is one economic model, such as advertising, right? We have a centralized, autocratically governed, global scale social media platform. That's what we're used to. And a lot of, in the policy, I'm a technologist, but in the policy arena what I hear, a lot of the assumptions that are underlying the regulations that I hear about assume this model. Okay, and that is fine if you want to stop there, but I think we can do better. And there is now a global movement to build something else, and that is what I would describe as locally run and governed, connected communities on the open social web. Now, the first thing you see here is there is no platform. Okay, in this model, we don't need a platform. There's no Facebook and there's no X. What we have is communities, which are much, much smaller, formed around particular people, particular interests, particular demographics, let me pick one of my favorites. A friend of mine runs a thing that is social media for 3D printing. Okay, what do people do? They exchange their 3D printing models. It's amazing, right? If you're into this kind of thing, you really like to hang out in this community. It would never work over here. The market for 3D social media printing is way too small for these guys to do anything to do about it. But here's a little community, and there are so many others, and they're popping up all over the place. So we have communities that do what they want to do, thousands, millions, I don't know how many people, nobody knows how to count them anyway, where trust and safety is appropriate for each community by that community, which is a completely different model. Let's take Black Sky over here, which is reasonably well known in the US particularly, where a guy called Rudy Fraser basically said, I'm going to build social media for my Black community. And it is built exactly for its needs, even self-governed, with democratic voting and all sorts of things. However, in contrast to what we had before, we got social media, which is a community site here and a community site here and a community site here, and didn't know anything about each other. What we now do, we connect them. And that's the new thing here. We connect the communities. So if I set up shop here, for example, on Blue Sky, or I set up shop over here on Mastodon, I can still follow the people over there, but I don't need a platform in the middle. So what we then get is trust and safety appropriate for the community, governance is appropriate for community, many economic models, because each of those communities has its own model. If you have a club, that's into whatever already has membership fees, why should they not, add some social media for that club? All right. If somebody does commerce, why not charge a percentage of the transactions that happen in that social context? Some of them are self-governed cooperatives. I used to be a member of a cooperative called Social.coop, just a bunch of people, each paying like $5 a month to have the social media experience they want. And they have their own community and they interact with the rest of the world. The key enablers here are that there is software, open source software usually, that enables communities to run their own platforms. They're sort of mini platforms because they're very, very small for one community at a time. And there's literally hundreds, by some count, thousands of pieces of software around that can do that. You can download it, install yourself. The European Commission has done so because it has its own Mastodon server, as far as I know. The communities can govern themselves, right? Who gets kicked out and who not is a matter for the community to decide. The platforms connect, I said this, and then we are not as good at this as we should be, but data and profile portability is a key function, as I would like to tell the regulators about this. If I have the ability to leave a platform with all my data and all my friends and go somewhere else, as the single biggest impact on keeping people honest in what they do, because the threat of leaving is a bigger threat than any other threat there is. And now to the terminology, here we have a bunch of different protocols that enable this. And on this level, it's actually not really important what these are. There is a lot of innovation happening all over the place. Let me pick the two largest ones. The oldest one around is ActivityPub, standardized by the W3C, which is the standards organization that standardizes the web. And that network, the subnetwork, is usually called the Fediverse. And then there is a new one pioneered by Blue Sky here in the US, but now picked up by a lot of other people, including Eurosky in Europe and W Social, of course. That is built around AdProto. However, it doesn't matter very much anymore because there's bridges. So I can follow them from one to the other. And unless you're a technology developer, you don't really care. So this is sort of the overview. I should want to say one more thing here. The market share today on the 99.9 versus 0.1. The question is, where do we put our time and attention and our investment, and where do we send our users? And one of the things that people who want to see that world or a version of this world rather than this world, one of the things that people can do here is what's sometimes called the +1 strategy, which is, of course, if 99% of your users are over here, you have to post there, and nobody is going to disagree with that. But you can also post here. That's the first thing you got to do, because if you don't do it and you really want this to see happen, then nothing will ever happen. So +1, pick any one of those, set up shop, and post there. But I think you can do one better, and I call it the 1 hour earlier strategy. And you might have heard that Trump has been thinking about posting to some of his True Social things earlier in exchange for a fee. Think of it like that, just without the fee. Post the world where you want to be 1 hour first. And then you post the same thing over here. What will happen? A bunch of people who depend on that hour are going to move. Right? So these are my two inputs. Support this world that doesn't have a platform, that's centered around communities and open protocols, and go there first. That's what I have to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Johannes. This opens up a question that I have for Anna now.
Yeah.
So W Social launched 5 weeks ago, we said, fully.
Yeah.
So my question for you, well, tell us a bit more about W Social.
Yeah.
where does W social position itself in this spectrum, let's say, in this hybrid models? And how do you think realistically that you'd be able to face the challenges that are brought by the main centralized model that we're seeing today, especially linked to issues like network effect and the criteria and conditions that led to the landscape of social media that we have today?
I go also to the slide. So I think very well explained. So when we started W, so of course the decision was, shall we try to build another social media platform individually here, like a closed shop? But then we thought, okay, that would be Ingmar, Anna, and our 20 friends, family and friends, and then it will take ages to scale. And we also didn't want to start a closed shop because we also didn't want to be seen as Europe is exclusive. We start with a European closed shop. We still wanted to be connected to the world. And this is why we decided we join one of these open protocols. We joined the so-called AT protocol. That means we have our own community with our own servers and infrastructure in Europe, because European tech sovereignty is very important to us. Many Europeans feel right now we want to have our data in Europe. We want to have it hosted in Europe according to European laws, like content moderated according to European laws. But we still want to be connected to the world. I think it's a very nice political narrative. And this is why we decided to join the AT protocol, because like this, we can automatically talk to the people on Blue Sky. This is Black Sky, right? Yes. And Eurosky. So that means if I post something, or you maybe later if you get access, on W, maybe you already have a Blue Sky account, you can follow me, I can follow you back. So, and this is really interesting. So interoperability, I think, is the future, because you can move. If you feel like, oh, I started on W, but I actually like Blue Sky better, I like Eurosky better, you can take all your data, your posts, your followers, your comments, everything, and you can migrate. And you can migrate here. So you can migrate in a circle as long as you want. But this means we are not locking people in, like X, for example, does, or others. So we chose on purpose something where people can port and transfer their data and their content like as they wish. And this is how users can also choose which community do I like best. So many, or some Europeans at least, decided that W could be a good option. For them, Eurosky is also a good option. But we have something that is different. We think we want to verify our users as humans, because we feel that one of the issues that X has right now, they have, what I heard, over 50% AI bots on the platform. And we thought we want to learn from that. And if we start from scratch, we want to improve. We want to take the learnings and we want to do things better. I mean, of course, it would be easier for us to just open the gates and say, whoever wants to join can join. But then we would have, I'm pretty sure, at least 30% AI bots from the beginning. So this is why we said people they have two options. They can either join W without any human verification. They can just read and like. But as soon as they want to be active in the public opinion building process, they want to share content, they want to share their opinion, they're part of the democracy opinion building process, they need to verify right now with a passport as a human. Because we decided, or we think, it's not enough anymore to count traffic lights or click here. Are you a bot or are you a human? Every AI agent is able to do that. So we need to come up with something which is very much AI bot proof or AI agent proof. And this is why we thought the only thing that an AI bot doesn't have is a face and an ID. It sounds a bit strict to say you need to verify as a human and you need to verify with your ID to share content. We think it's the only way to make sure that you have a human-to-human interaction. So, and this is what we're seeing. This community is now growing since 5 weeks. And the beauty is, of course, it's a bit clunky to get people on board. Maybe some of you have already tried. This human verification can be improved. It's a huge bottleneck right now, But as soon as people are in, they are connected to humans. And it's heartwarming to see this community. People share their experience, they are civilized, they are offering opinions, they're taking opinions. And this is the best proof of concept that we think it was absolutely worth taking this additional step and say you need to verify as a human in order to be part of the public opinion building process. But if you feel this step is too much for me, you can join Eurosky, for example, you can join Blue Sky, and then you can watch WBIT from the sidelines. So it's interoperable, you can still see our content. But of course, you have only here the advantage of only communicating within a special feed only with humans. But we think this is the future. We don't want to lock people in. We want to give people the opportunity to move back and forth. And this also creates more innovation. Because if you don't lock people in, if you let them free to decide, if suddenly there is a new community could happen, maybe there's another community in a year, which is much better. So then people will go to that one, which fosters innovation overall. One thing, and I will close with that, what we also want to do different, or two things, we don't allow right now teenagers under 18 because we feel, I mean, there's so many laws out there that we see the writings on the wall. So maybe we reduce it to 16, but right now the age gating is 18. And what we also want to do, we want to do the opposite. We want to bring people back out of their filter bubbles. And we want to make sure that people are discussing common topics. And how we do that? We have on W a so-called trend machine, where you can see trends in real time that's happening in the or on the internet. So we source this information from, I don't know, over 10,000 sources, media outlets, public media, private media, other media outlets. So we know what people are discussing in the internet. And then it's in real life. So you can say, what's happening right now? What's trending in the US? Trend number one, I don't know, maybe world champion soccer championship still, I don't know, being discussed. So trend number two, trend number three, and then you can discuss these trends on W. So the idea is to bring people back from their filter bubbles and to create a public square where people can really see what other people are talking about in real life. This is really interesting. I give you one example and then I give the microphone back. We heard a couple of months ago, you probably know this narrative, the climate debate is dead. Nobody is really talking about climate any longer. But if you look at the real data, last week in the UK, topic number 2 and 3, climate, El Nino and the heat wave. So it's really interesting. Sometimes the media is telling us, or social media is telling us, that a certain topic is dead or a certain topic is trending. But if you look here at the real-time data, what are people really interested in? What are people discussing? It's very different. And I tell you, the last weeks was the first 3 topics trending always soccer, football, whatever. But that's also interesting. Sport unites and everyone is happy about that. So, and this is why I agree with your slide here. And I think this is the future. And I hope that this model overall will win. I'm happy to see more competitors because only competition brings innovation in a very responsible and honest and fair way.
Thank you for that. Daphne, let me turn it over to you. So you've written a lot. I mean, since the 2000 at least, you've been conducting research.
Nobody read that one.
Okay, you can send it. You can send it to me later. You've written a lot in general about platform power, users' rights, everything also related to tech law and the First Amendment, Section 230, but we're not going to talk about that. I would like to ask you your general opinion on the appeal of these solutions. And I also know that you've written a lot about middlewares as a potentially intermediate, let's say, service infrastructure that could serve purpose linked to users' rights, users' empowerment, and feed into somehow this hybrid model that Johannes and Anna were just talking about. So if you could tell us more about middlewares.
Sure. So I think I tend to lump together for policy purposes interoperability, which is what I don't need the chart, it's okay. No, that's fine. So I love models like Mastodon or like Blue Sky, where the idea is you have common protocols, you have a bunch of different players in the ecosystem, they can exchange information, and users can decide what sort of like lens they want to see, what content moderation rules they want to live under, what ranking algorithms they want to live under, but without forfeiting network effects. They can still pull in the information from other places. So that is my preferred model. But I think it is very useful to also talk about the maybe less ambitious model that often gets called middleware. And there the idea is, okay, the incumbent, Meta is still sitting at the middle of this system. They are hosting all of the posts. They have the behavioral data, whatever, but at least the users on Meta can choose a third party to provide content moderation services or provide ranking algorithms of the user's preference layered on top of that. So maybe I want, I'm very loopy from 3 days at TrustCon. Maybe I want Disney to do my content ranking, but I want a feminist organization to get rid of all those princesses. So like I layer them on, I sign up for those. The appeal, I think a lot of the criticism of this idea is who will bother to sign up, which is always a fair question, who will leave the defaults, et cetera. And I think to my mind, the most realistic providers are either commercial vendor, like entertainment companies, ESPN, Disney, somebody that already has a brand and that people are willing to pay for some reason, or providers who serve an idiosyncratic need of the user. So if you don't want to see images of alcohol consumption because you are dealing with alcohol addiction, maybe you can get a lens that excludes that. Or you're trying to learn Spanish, and so you want more Spanish language things escalated. You can come up with a lot of these more idiosyncratic ones. So why would you do the middleware version, leave the incumbents in the middle, the sort of a hub and spoke model is how I think of it? If you think it's not politically realistic to dismantle them, but maybe you can pass a law compelling them to interoperate with middleware, maybe that's the reason. B, if your top priority is getting rid of particularly dangerous illegal content and you want an accountable actor who, the government can, you want an accountable actor to do child abuse content removal or terrorist content removal in compliance with law, well, keeping a big company that already has offices in Brussels in that role might suit that purpose as well. So as I said, I like a purely interoperable system, but I understand why plenty of people favor the middleware model. I think we've talked about this. When I'm in the US, I'm a DSA booster. And when I go to Brussels, I'm like, wait, it's got all these problems. And similarly, when I'm in a room with you, I'm a middleware booster or an interoperability booster. And when I'm in a room with technologists, I'm like Johannes, I'm like, okay, there are actually all these problems we need to solve. And so I wrote an article, this one really was in about 2020, listing what I saw as the 4 big problems then. And I'm happy to say, I think maybe we're on the way to solving some of them. So one was just like, making the interoperability work at all. If we're talking about layering something on top of Meta, like, do they have to build APIs that are, going to make this possible? And how good are they going to make those APIs? And will the middleware providers really be meaningfully in competition with them? It all depends on how technically feasible this all is. The second one, and the one I think is most maybe intractable, is trade-offs about user privacy. It's one thing if we're talking about Twitter, or as I understand it, how W would work, which is all of the posts are supposed to be public in the first place. That's relatively straightforward to do interoperability. But if we're talking about Facebook, and my cousin shares a personal health update on Facebook, she authorize Facebook to see it. She authorized me to see it, but she didn't authorize this third-party middleware provider that I went out and contracted with. And the scenario where they're getting her data is very similar to Cambridge Analytica. So this is a very real issue to try to solve. The other two are about money. What is the revenue model? And maybe there's licensing and micropayments. We can be creative about this. And then the other money one is who's going to pay for all this content moderation? Content moderation is expensive. And if every provider, every node in the network or every middleware provider that's layered on top of Instagram is doing redundant work, they're all trying to identify, what is nudity or what is terrorist content or, whatever. That's expensive and wasteful. So the things that I think have potentially gotten better are based on AI, and I'm not an AI booster by any means, but I do think that AI is bringing the cost of content moderation way down. At TrustCon, probably some of you saw Dave Wilner and Samid Chakrabarty demonstrating COPE, which is a cheaper and cheaper, localer and localer, smaller and smaller tool for automating content moderation. So if that cost comes down, then the viability of all these other players gets much better. And then I think, and this is a lawyer speculating about technology, so let me give that caveat. I think that some of the privacy problems may also be reducible, because if you can do my cousin's Facebook post, it's getting, if all of the new moderation or new ranking that the middleware providers are offering takes place on my device so that it never gets sent to the servers of the middleware provider, then that preserves her privacy. So, to the extent that the kinds of processing that take place for content moderation and ranking right now that are, mostly done on platform servers, if that can be moved onto the local user's device, that actually can solve a lot of those privacy problems. So I'm excited about things getting better in all of those ways.
Yeah. Please.
I want to make one comment on as the dedicated technologist on the panel here. Let me say this: there's often being bandied about that some of this we were talking about here is not possible, technically not possible. And I'm the first one to say that we have not solved all of the problems, but I see absolutely no reason that any of what we're talking about is not solvable if one wants to. Interoperability at scale works today. We have, for example, we have the AdProto network and we have the ActivityPub network, and they are built right here in San Francisco. We have a tool called BridgeFed, which connects the two networks, and there's several 100,000 accounts that send things back and forth all the time. It works. Okay, so the excuse that it doesn't work or there's all these difficulties is not there. Now, to your point, there's a lot of cases we have to investigate as we want to make this broader, but these are all solvable. I am very confident that this can be done.
So I agree with that if we're talking about a bunch of voluntary players like we have in the Mastodon or AT-Proto ecosystem right now. But the biggest skeptics of middleware that I encounter are people who deal with communications law and interoperability. They're all like, ha ha ha, you should see how telecommunications interoperability really works, how much the incumbents mess with the interoperability mandates in a way that makes them less effective. So I'm belaboring this because there are people here who might be thinking about passing laws. And one of the appealing moves for a lot of people is to use a competition law to compel interoperability for the incumbents. And I think that's making the incumbents not misbehave under that system is one of the problems to solve there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and we'll get to the policy session of this discussion because there's a lot to unpack there. Perhaps just to recall what was just discussed, and it's a lot. When we're looking into the trust and safety value, let's say, why the systems are desirable, we're mostly talking about user choice, users' rights. That's fundamentally it from a selling perspective. the core question, and again, you talked about this now, is why haven't this system scaled then? What is missing? Is it an infrastructure issue? Again, you've mentioned it, but I'd like to dive into this a bit more. Is it an infrastructure issue? Is it an investment issue? Is it a legal issue? Is it potentially something systemic linked to how the major platforms have worked up until today? So you have to fundamentally tap into network effects dynamics to actually build into the systems and create an alternative solutions that people are actually going to want to use and somehow make profitable in the long run. So yes,
happy
some
to
self-criticism
yeah
around why these systems haven't worked.
Happy to comment on that. First, on your points, yes, it's all, so there's so many problems. We try to address some of them. I don't know if we can address all of them, at least not at the beginning. So we are starting this journey. We try to address the human verification problem at the beginning, bring people out of the filter bubbles, and not allow teenagers under 18 right now. There are many other problems we try to see as and learn as we go. And I feel everything is a big balance. Coming to the privacy part, of course, when you want to verify humans at the beginning, and we decided to use passport or ID at one point for that, of course, that involves the processing of biometric data. This is per se a very huge, it requires a lot of data, but we decided exactly what you proposed, that the data stays on the user's device. So we came up with a privacy preserving technology so that as soon as you maybe decide to use the app and verify as a human, you have two apps and your data, your passport data stays on your device. And then you can choose which data types you want to give to us. We only require the fact that you're a human and that you're above 18. But you don't need to share your clear name, for example. So when we introduced this to the media, there was a huge outcry at the beginning. How can you ask users to verify as a human with their passport? Oh my God, so privacy intrusive. We don't store the data because that was my idea from the beginning. This is what I learned in my 12 years at eBay. The less data you have, the less you can be breached. So that means I don't have a lot of data to breach. The data that's on the platform is public, as you said, per se public. Whatever you're posting, I'm posting is public. So if someone is breaching these servers, okay, there's a breach, but the data is public. But since we don't store any biometric data or ID verification data, it's on your device or on my device, it cannot be breached. So there's not much to breach at W because either the data is public anyway, or the data is on your device. So we chose a setup from the beginning, which is pretty privacy friendly. So that means at the beginning, big outcry in the media, how can you ask people to verify with their passport? As soon as people now on the platform, I thought that was the diagram. Now people complain, oh, you need to verify, we want to know the real names. So just the fact that someone is human and above 18 is not enough. We also want to see if this is really Anna Seiter, if she is verified with a clear name. But at this point, we had to take a decision because there are many people who want to join W. We have people from 180 different countries on the waitlist. And many of these countries are not democracies. They don't want to share their clear name. They want to join W with a pseudonym. They don't want to share their real name because they're afraid if they share their public opinion and we have their real name, so then they might feel not safe. So this is why we decided that users can join anonymously. We only know you're human and above 18. We don't know anything else. If you decide to join with a clear name, that's your choice. But if you decide you're coming from a dictatorship country, you can decide also to join anonymously. What I want to say is that always is a big balance between different interests, like privacy, clear name, how civilized is the platform. And so we decided that this is a good option. Then coming to your second question, why isn't that scalable? We hope it's scalable. I think, honestly, it's about funding. Of course, getting funding is in Europe a bit more difficult than in the US because we don't have a single market. We don't have a single capital market. I think with a couple of smart growth hacks and with AI, it's probably easier than it was 20 years ago. So we use AI to the fullest from scratch. I think without AI, it would not have been possible to build a social media platform within a couple of months. We will also use AI for content moderation. We train our AI agents with European laws. Like these are European laws, DMA, DSA, whatever, GDPR. This is the case law. AI agents will be trained with that. And I think we will also use AI technology to scale faster. So funding is, I think, challenging in Europe, but I think it's working. And then it comes to the business model. We think we can only scale and compete as a for-profit company. So that was a decision with purpose, because we feel only when we offer investors a business model, a for-profit business model, we can attract more investors. That does not mean that we don't have values. We just want to offer a for-profit company and an option for investors to also get profit in return. Our business model will be two-pronged. So first, advertising. We don't do that this year or next year, probably in 2028. We start with advertising, classical advertising with European laws. The good news is that we can say on our platform, the advertising will be displayed to 100% humans. This is very interesting for advertisers. Advertisers would advertise on W, not to 50% AI bots. Second revenue stream will be micropayments. We all know the frustration. You want to read an article, it's behind the paywall. You don't want to sign up for another annual subscription. But if you can imagine, you have a wallet functionality on the platform, you upload 20 euros, and then you can buy individual articles for small money. That's very attractive for younger users, like students, young professionals who don't have the money to sign up for 5 different annual subscriptions. This could be a business model. And the idea is I think we calculated that we just need 1 million users to be profitable, to be at least self-sustaining. And we have over 100,000 on the wait list without any marketing spend. So if someone is asking how can you scale, I think scaling to 1 million is probably not difficult. I think it will be difficult to scale from 1 million to 10 million to 100 million, but this is far down the road. And we looked into the numbers from TikTok, for example. They were only able to scale with a lot of marketing budget. So now we are raising money to cover the foundation, the developers, content moderation. But the more money we can get from investors, the more we can spend on marketing and the faster we can scale. I think it's possible. The momentum is here. People understand that this old model locks them in, gives no opportunity to change. I am a true believer that we can scale, but I also believe you can only scale as a for-profit company.
Can I make a comment about the scaling?
Yeah.
If we can get this slide back one more time, if it happens to be there. If not, I want you to think for a second over here, what we had here. Imagine what was there. One of these communities, let's say you're scaling this. You get 1 billion users. You have this, practically speaking, okay? We don't actually want that. We want 1 million communities that you can feel at home in. Okay, so the scaling here is not one platform gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. That's a sort of counterproductive. Maybe 1 million communities use the same software to do that, but it is it's the number of communities we want to scale, not the number of platforms. Otherwise, we'll be right back here. So I just want to make sure that people understand that there's a fundamentally different metric here. We haven't talked about metrics, right? Metrics, number of active users, number of addicted clickers, right? Is that the right measure? No, it's not. We don't know exactly what the right measure is, but that is not it. And here, feeling at home online, like I did when I discovered the internet before the web, Usenet, it was such an amazing experience. This is the experience we want to have back because it was so much better. And it was small scale and focused. And what about we have, 100 million or whatever communities around the world that do that, that all interoperate. There's no scaling in the platforms. There is no trillion-dollar company in here. There might be some very nice 100 million or billion-dollar companies, but not trillion-dollar companies.
Very brief. to quickly add on that, if people ask me, how do you want to make W really addictive? My answer is, I don't want to make it really addictive. It's about very focused, meaningful interaction. So my vision is, in the future, if some of you might use W, maybe in Europe, you go there in the morning, check some media, and then maybe you come back in the evening. It's about meaningful interaction. And we are right now negotiating individual deals with big European media houses, because I want to have the media on board from the beginning, because what the other option did in the past was extracting value from media houses. We want to give it back by bringing media houses in from the beginning in with the so-called content for equity deals. They get equity in W, I don't know, 1%, for example. In return, we get exclusive content so that people come to us for good, high quality media content. They come to W, they can read in the morning, Dutch news, British news, German news. Imagine even translated into different European languages. How cool would that be? So that my parents who don't speak well English can read The Guardian in German. How amazing would that be? So it's about meaningful interaction, not about making the platform really addictive.
No, thank you so much for that, and love to discuss more about this, but I'm also mindful of time. So I'm going to ask you one last question to the three of you, and then we perhaps can take one or two questions for the public and then wrap it up. Before my question, I just wanted to take a step back and actually tell you guys why we're doing this.
Now she tells us
why we're here. So there's a lot that the European Union has been doing in the past years that touch upon these issues, right? If you look into the core principles within the DSA, they're all about transparency, accountability, and user choice. Then we can discuss how they actually get implemented in practice, but that's it. DMA is the same when it comes to interoperability, data portability, and competition. There's several initiatives that the European Union has been pushing for in the past years that relate to favoring innovation policy, the 28th regime, harmonizing regulation and rules for businesses to actually grow and invest in Europe, so much and so forth. There's also, let's say, backside discussion that is happening on tech sovereignty and all of that. So what the Commission and especially Connect has been doing in the past month is exactly looking into this. So understanding internally, how can we use the regulatory framework that we already have to incentivize and support the future of social media, considering all of these factors, all of these principles and values that we want to support in Europe. So that's why these reflections are happening in terms of outcomes. They could follow different directions, but there's already a lot that exists on these issues, or at least adjacent in the European Union framework. And there's more that could be done because policymakers are looking into the space and we're interested into potential future actions. This brings me to my question for you, which is the policy question. So what do you think policymakers should be doing when looking into the space? Is it an hands-off approach, like actually don't put more regulation on these actors? Is it more a matter of funding? Is it a matter of interoperability? What is one wish that you like to bring forward? Daphne, perhaps I'll let you start, and then we can speakers.
Sure. So there's kind of a spectrum of people in, I don't know, the version of this conversation that I'm in terms of what legal intervention they think is possible. Some think you need an interoperability mandate, like competition authorities to come in. Some think that the market will provide, which I was a big skeptic of, but like the market is a little bit provided, or I don't know, whatever. The world is a little bit providing, so they weren't entirely wrong. And then the in-between is like, well, at least let's lower the legal barriers that prevent these things from existing now. And I'm very aware of the US ones, and I'm less sure of what the European ones are, although the GDPR gets really complicated. But in the US, there are laws like the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, Section 1201 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, that, for example, Meta used to sue and shut down what was basically a middleware provider called Power Ventures 15 years ago, longer. So getting those legal barriers out of the way so that people aren't scared to even try providing these services would make a big difference here. And I can't speak as much to Europe. But then in terms of trying to cultivate the ecosystem, I think one really important thing is for those of us who follow immunities and intermediary liability law, we're accustomed to a world in Europe where to be immunized, you have to be a hosting or caching or like transit provider. Well, these ecosystems depend on some more complicated kinds of entities. Like Blue Sky, for example, there are third-party labelers who attach labels as tags to posts, and then a user can set up or get from a third party a filter that filters out things that a particular labeler put a particular tag on. That's great because it really distributes the work and lets people choose who they're going to trust. But there's no immunity for labelers. So I think thinking carefully about in a distributed system, what are the different players that are going to exist and that need to have the immunities or the incentives or whatever the legal infrastructure is that's going to be in place? I think that will be really important.
Thank you.
I think I would say everything she just said, and I would add a few things. From my perspective, who is driving the change from the left to the right? Yes, you, of course, are. But in general, it's not established companies. It's entrepreneurs, it's people who see the vision and believe it could be different than it is. And as a regulator, you only talk to established companies. You're missing the part that's going to help you. So I would strongly recommend to find avenues by which you listen to the people in the garage who want to do something interesting here for a Black community. And they do exist in Europe, not as much as here in Silicon Valley, but they do exist there as well. Listen to them and see, do some what-if games. What had this? What could you build? And let innovators innovate and remove obstacles for them from innovating. So for example, today, innovating in social media is really hard. It used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago that all of the big platforms had APIs. You could talk to them. There's all sorts of interesting products. Twitter used to have third-party clients. Yeah, you might know about how it does. Facebook used to have an API. It all got shut down over the years for some better and worse reasons that were stated publicly, but they're all gone, these APIs. The innovation around these platforms here on the left is impossible. So whatever you can to make innovation possible, innovators, and there tend to be three guys in the garage who may not have showered for a while, but these are the people you want to talk to, not the ones that have legal departments. And I'd be happy to connect them because this is my community. That's what I live in that community.
By the way, you can ask Johannes after for drinks about the advocacy work he's been doing in the US around the Digital Choice Act and how this is being implemented in USA, but we don't have time, so you'll ask him later.
I have business cards and handouts and stuff, and I usually don't bite.
So a couple of things from my side. Please, no more laws. There are enough laws in Europe. We can deal with them. They're amazing. We love them, but not more. So that's a statement from the beginning. So, and
I don't know.
good. So I have more. So here we already have interoperability. That's great. The big question is, how can we get them over? But there's also a law for that. That's GDPR. I think it's Article 17 or 19. I don't remember. It's the right to data portability. So in my time at eBay, no one ever exercised the right of data portability from eBay to whatever a competitor in Europe, because there were no competitors. Same here. Nobody ever, I don't know, maybe a few people, exercised their right from data portability from X to a European competitor, because so far there were no big European competitors. Imagine someone, a company, would say, hey, dear X, we want to ask you for an API for the exercise of Article, let's say, I don't know, 17 or 19, right to data portability under GDPR. X is obliged to fulfill this right. So this could be an amazing angle from a European perspective with an existing law to say, X, you're required to hand over data, user data in a readable format over to these communities, to whoever wants to use it. So the laws are there, no more laws, but the laws that are there are great and can be used. Second, the people with whom I work with on the European Commission level were amazing. So you probably know that one of our first users are the major European institutions. They joined W from the beginning, which is amazing. All these people who work with us were amazing. They were fast, they were sharp, they know we need to act in Europe, which was great to see. One thing that can be improved is not necessarily the funding, but the funding process. I think the funding is there. We see all these amazing funds. But when we look into the funding process, what I sometimes see, the deadlines are 9 months in the future. Then it's very complicated to apply. You need to have a consortium of 3 companies from 3 different countries. So it would take me another month. I need to hire 1 person to find additional companies in 2 other European countries. Then there's the deadline, then there are reporting structures. So I would need to hire an additional person only to apply for grants. And I don't even know if I will get the grant. So there are agencies in Europe who make this based on a commission basis. You can hire the agency and say, if you get the grant, you get 10% or 20%. So that means the funding is, the laws are there, they're amazing, no more laws. The funding is there, but the process to apply for the funding is pretty cumbersome. But overall, my experience working with European institutions was amazing over the last couple of weeks and months. So everyone is, and they want to help with all the resources we have. The European Commission has an AI translation center. They want to provide the services. It's all amazing. Everyone wants to help. And I think this is the new feeling in Europe, that we want to work together. We want to be fast. We want to be smart. And we want to do something good together.
Very nice. Maybe just to add to that, a good reading that I do recommend for everybody here is the DMA review report that was published a couple of weeks ago. And accompanied by that was a study commissioned to the GRC that talks about interoperability obligations coming from the DMA that could be extended to social networks. So that's a nice read. Anyway, I don't want to be a censorer, but you know, we come with a fame for it. So 1 question only, because we all want to drink. Sorry.
Great, thank you. You get to ask the question for the last 30 minutes. My name is Thomas. I have a question. And I'd like to get a clarification question up front. First of all, I agree with everything that was said tonight. And I think it's an absolutely no-brainer for everybody in this room. If you're not a big stakeholder, a stockholder in the social media platform, everybody who has a brain should go to the right side, right? Power to the people, democratization, it's the way to go. Yet it hasn't happened. 15 years ago, I tried something with a professor at Stanford to define the open social protocol. It didn't work out. But Johannes, you said it earlier, the technology is not the barrier anymore. The technology is actually being solved. 3 years ago, I was trying to create a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. In principle, is this similar to a DAO on the right side? That's my first question, to get a little bit of an understanding from a model, because related to that answer, the issue is adaptability and scale, and the model out there is different. No VC, from my own experience, will put venture money in one of these small entities with the expectation of what an investor has when it comes to the return on the investment. That's a big issue. I ran into that for 3 years and it didn't work out. So is it close to a DAO model? And if not, then the question is, how can this be implemented in regards to managing the ecosystem in itself? Because if there is no ownership, you will have a very hard time to implement this.
So apparently you have been nominated to answer this. I think the key point on the slide here is governance as appropriate for the community. If the community thinks there's this guy who is just the guy who's been doing this for 20 years and we trust him all completely and he's the dictator for life, this is how we govern our community, that's fine. It works for this community. It doesn't work for some other community. Some other community might say, we want to apply a DAO here. Why not? Delegate the responsibility for the governance and the governance structure down to the community for whom, that is being governed. I mean, that's basically almost democracy 101. We have lost this over here. We have governance is so far away, right? And then secondly, on the business model. So there is, the short answer is, we don't know yet, okay? There's all sorts of ideas. We just heard some, but nobody has really proven them. What we do know is that at a small scale, a lot of self-sustaining communities do exist that basically are the equivalent of a potluck dinner. Everybody brings something, and it makes a nice dinner because everybody brings something. It's a community in which this works. But there's also many communities where the business model is not directly that. So, for example, there's many universities that are beginning to deploy these kind of service for their students. What's the business model? Well, it's just a service that the university or school provides for their students. If they provide email, why not social media? Right. So then you have to go into what's the supply chain here. How does the university do this? Right. Do they have service providers? Do they have technology providers? And so forth and so forth. So when this is all said and done, the ecosystem is going to be a very complicated supply chain. Think automotive supply chain. Don't think one big platform with Meta in the middle. And they're just like in a complex industrial supply chain. There is going to be business models all over the place. And so the answer is not so much what is the business model, but what is one particular business model for one particular niche in one particular place of the supply chain that works. And some of them, I think, are very much VC fundable.
Very, very good question. So VCs, so far we don't have any VC money. It's just private angel investors. But of course, at one point we will talk to, we already talked about, we haven't received VC money yet. The VCs love this connection for one reason, because it's not just that we might lose people, we can also gain people. So, and the first question was when we said, oh, we want to start a European social media platform, the VCs were like, but how do you want to scale? How do you want to crack the network effect? I said, we are already connected with a network which is more than 40 million people around the world. And we're like, oh, that's interesting. So this connection is very much appreciated. And you need to see, Blue Sky has over 40 million users. I would say at least 10 million are based in Europe, and they would be interested to move to us, to have their data in Europe, be under European law, but still have the same reach. And this is also what the European institutions did. They migrated their Blue Sky accounts over to W, because that was an easy pitch. We can say, you can join W with your full account. Like Christine Lagarde, Ursula von der Leyen, they had Blue Sky accounts. We were able to migrate their accounts over with their full reach, followers, posts, comment, everything. So they still have the same reach on Blue Sky, but now they have the data on European soil. So win-win for everyone. And by the way, Blue Sky is fine with that because they also want to see more diversity. And we are also attracting more users overall to the AT protocol. What VCs are asking, but Anna, that's nice that you move a couple of users back and forth in this AT protocol, but how do you want to get those? This is the big VC question, because people are usually lazy. I mean, this migration, maybe people do, but people are lazy to do the big move. And coming to Johannes, I think we see one approach right now that people do this +1. They're still on X, but they're maybe on Blue Sky or on W. And this is exactly our pitch. I don't know this is exactly our pitch that we say, you can have 2 accounts. We never ask someone, you need to give up your X account. But we say, if you want to do us a favor, post 1 hour or 30 minutes in advance. Because exactly what you say is happening. The journalists are coming to us, the media houses, because they want to have the news first. So what I'm seeing could be 2 options, either this +1, people have for a certain amount of time 2 accounts. Organizations can do this multi-posting. They have multi-posting tools where organizations have, they say this post please on X and on W 30 minutes earlier. So, and then at one point, they hopefully maybe phase out X at one point. This could be one option. And the second option would be having this data portability right, where people can say, we are not there yet, but maybe we can use European laws like this Article 17 or 19 GDPR to say people can maybe at one point migrate all their data, not just from Blue Sky on the same protocol, but also between platforms. We are not there yet, but I think we can use hopefully European laws to the fullest to enable that. And that could be a game changer, because then we can say you can move all your content from X. But first, we need to grow here to critical mass, because people would only do this move if they know most of their friends are already here. And I think this is what's probably happening. People are scaling up this, and hopefully we see in a couple of weeks, months, or years, the mass movement from here. It's a bet. Very valid question.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Please join me in thanking Daphne, Johannes, Anna. That's it. You're good to go. I mean, get a drink, get some food, yeah. Talk to us.